Pastor Jim Bolin is the founding pastor of Trinity Chapel in West Cobb, Georgia. He and his wife have a vision to embrace the lost, the hurting, and the next generation. We'll find out what God is doing in the life and the ministry of Pastor Jim Bolin here today on Babbie's House. Stay tuned. A great show is coming your way.
Every day is filled with possibility. At Babbie's house, everybody is family. Welcome to Babbie's house.
Praise the Lord, everybody. This is Babbie Mason, and I'm the host of Babbie's House. Thanks for joining me today. I'm so happy that you've joined me. I've got a wonderful show prepared for you today. Pastor Jim Bolin is the founding pastor of Trinity Chapel outside of Atlanta, Georgia, and he and his wife have a heart for the world, a heart for the hurting, the lost, and the next generation, and their church is a reflection of the New Testament church. We're going to find out what God is doing in the church as well as in the pastor's personal life. You know, we ought to be going from glory to glory and seeing God moving and in operation in our lives, and his life is indicative of what God is doing in the church. So we're going to talk with Pastor Jim Bolin in just a little bit, but right now I want to lead us in a song of worship and just invite the Spirit of the Lord is here. You know, he is here because the Bible says wherever two or more are gathered in his name, he promises he will be in their midst. And so I want to just recognize his presence with this song, The Lord is Here. In these holy moments, God is moving by his grace. I can see the glory of his presence on each face. In the beauty of holiness, no other name compares to our God, to our God. The Lord is here, the Lord is here. He is awesome in this place, the Lord is here. He's moving among us, descending upon us. Render praise and bless his name, the Lord is here. Sing it with me. He is here. The Lord is here. He is awesome in this place. The Lord is here. He's moving among us and descending upon us. We render praise and bless his name. The Lord is here. While the Lord is waiting, just surrender everything. No need for delaying. You can trust him with your need. Will you give him your all today? Open your heart and say, oh, you are God and you are here. Jesus, you are here. You are awesome in this place. Yes, you are here. You're moving among us and descending upon us. We render praise and bless your name, for you are here. Here in your presence, right from the start. right here in my heart. You're in my heart. Oh, you are here, Jesus. Yes, you are here. You are awesome in this place. You are here. You're moving among us and descending upon us. We render praise and we bless your name. We bless your name, Jesus. We bless your name, Lord Jesus. You're welcome here. You are awesome. Your name is awesome, Jesus. You are here. You're moving among us and descending upon us. We render praise and bless your name, for you are here. Welcome back to Babbie's House. I have the joy of introducing Pastor Jim Bolin. He is the founding pastor of the Trinity Chapel Church of God, just outside of Atlanta, Georgia, in West Georgia. He is the founding pastor, and he and his wife have a powerful vision to embrace the lost, the hurting, the next generation, the cultures in our community. And God is doing a beautiful work at Trinity Chapel, as well as an obvious work in the pastor's life. You know, you just keep living for Jesus, and you begin to see the hand of the Lord being manifest in your life. And you know He's working, He's moving, He's changing, He's growing you up and taking you from glory to glory. Will you help me to welcome to Babbie's House, Pastor Jim Bolin. Pastor, it's good to see you today, and I'm so happy that you're here.
Good to be with you, Babbie.
Amen. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
You know, Pastor, I travel a lot. I sing for a living and travel and speak to women and do concerts. And I recognize that the heart of the pastor, you know, my father's a pastor too. Yeah. And my brother's a pastor. I come from a long line of preachers and pastors. So and I grew up in church. And I see, just by observation, that the spirit, the personality of the church takes after the preacher.
Yeah.
You know, it's whatever, if the pastor's charismatic and gregarious and loves people and it's a singing church, you'll hear it, and you'll feel it, and you'll sense it. It'll take after the personality of the pastor.
Yeah.
And that's literally what is happening at Trinity Chapel.
Well,
but talk to us about the vision and what when the Lord that put on your heart when you founded the church.
Well, you know, when God calls a man or woman, but he calls a person, not a committee, because it's too hard to get things through committee. So God just has to work with a person. And he put, at the time, it was a kind of a crazy vision in my heart. It wasn't something that was really seen a lot or heard a lot in the church back in the late 70s, early 80s, when this began to form in me. I was on a search. I was a young man, and I would read the Bible, raised in a, charismatic Pentecostal full gospel church, and we believed in all these things. But I just wasn't seeing really what I felt like I should be seeing, not a reflection or speaking anything detrimental about anybody. It was just in my heart. And God had put I have to go back to my childhood. I was born and raised in California. And at 9 years old, my dad moved us down to Southern California. We wound up in Pasadena. And on my street there that I grew up on was a black family, a Japanese family, and a Venezuelan family. So we swapped houses as kids. I'd eat at their tables, they'd eat at my table, and my mama would whoop them, and their mama would whoop me, It was a family. So I got exposed to that, and it became a part of who I was. And I just felt like that's how life was supposed to be. And as I got into the church and started pastoring and all, there was this part of me that I felt like was just missing. It wasn't really being realized, and I was missing the cultures. I was missing what heaven's supposed to look like.
Yes.
And nothing wrong with all white churches, all black churches, all brown churches, because sometimes the demographics, that's the way it is. But when you live in an area like Atlanta, where, I mean, it's a melting pot
Yes, it is.
of nationalities and cultures and people. I just think we as the kingdom need to reflect more of that. And not everybody can do it, but I think more people are trying to do it because they see that it really is the God way. And as I was praying about this early on, at 31, God put in my heart to start a church. And I loaded up my wife and my two little kids at the time, Jason and Jessica, and Robin and I. We were in Carrollton pastoring a church there. We moved back to West Cobb. And on September the 11th, 1983, we launched Trinity Chapel.
Wow.
And I had an auspicious birthday. We didn't know at the time that 9/11 was going to be such a big date in our nation.
Yes.
But for us, it was a beautiful start. It was a humble start in a little storefront church. But we started with this thought in mind. God put this into my heart. He said, I want you to love, accept, and forgive people. I'd read a book by Jerry Cook that had come out years prior to that, several years prior to that. And as I read that book, I wept because it spoke my heart.
Yes.
And that vision became a part of who we were. And one of the things was I wanted the church to look like heaven.
Yes.
And for 10 years, I couldn't get, not one person I would get some people of color to come, but they'd walk in and they'd wave by, you know.
Yeah.
They wouldn't stick. So God began to deal with me about if you're going to reach different folk, you have to be intentional. You know, so we had to make some changes.
And tell me about the church today. Tell me
Church
how
today
it's
probably
growing,
is a
where
good
it's going.
65% other. Or maybe it's only 35% like me, and then it's brown, it's red, it's black, it's Latino, it's Asian, and it's African American, it's Africans. It's just people of the world, because Atlanta is a melting pot.
Yes, it is.
And that's really what our church has become.
You know, in my experience, I've sung for predominantly white churches. I've sung for predominantly black churches. And there's a personality, you know, that happens.
There's a culture there.
There's a culture.
Yeah.
And, you know, black people tend to be a little more emotional. We clap on 2 and 4. We love that emotional experience. And white churches are a little more subdued. It's a little more, it's quieter.
Yeah.
We focus a lot on the praise. They might focus a lot on the
worship,
solemnity, the
yeah.
worship. But something happens when the two come together.
Yeah.
It creates a third.
A kingdom. It's a kingdom culture. And that's what God put in my heart. He said that this is not supposed to be white or black or brown or red. It's supposed to be kingdom. We're supposed to be reflecting the heart of the kingdom. And what I love about it and what we're able to do because of that is we're constantly evolving. It's just not one style, one flow. It's these different ebbs and flows of God that move in the kingdom and help us be who we are. So Trinity Chapel has experienced that over the years. God's been so good to us, and we've seen growth, and we've seen lives change, and we've invested in people and been able to send them off and go to other areas of the city and around the state, nation, and do the kingdom work and take this DNA that God put in us and hopefully transfer it to other places.
You told me before that it was your desire to have a church that looked like the New Testament.
Heaven, yeah.
Looked like heaven.
Yeah.
And you wanted a church that walked out the red letters.
Yeah.
You know, the words of Jesus.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that.
Well, you know, I was thankful for my heritage. I wouldn't trade anything in the world for it. I was raised in the Church of God. And my granddad was a Church of God preacher out in California. So, I mean, that's all I've ever known. And we, in the Pentecostal Church of God, Assemblies of God, your mainline Pentecostal churches, you know, we believe in the whole Bible. Not that others don't, but we believe that gifts are for today and demonstration of those gifts. And, but we would talk about it, but I wasn't seeing it. I wasn't seeing people experiencing that. We would shout about it, but when the shouting was done, it was like, who's doing it? And so for me, a part of my draw in starting Trinity Chapel was I really wanted a New Testament church. I love to preach from the Old Testament. So much of my preaching is out of the Old. So it's not that I'm, you know, against Old Testament. I love it, and it's phenomenal. But I realized that there were things that Jesus said that the church would do that we talked about, but we didn't do. So my heart has been, and I'm still in that. I pray that I die going after that.
Amen.
You know, I'm wanting to see it. I thank God for what's happened, but they hear me say at church oftentimes, if this is the best God can do, I'm ticked off. You know, because I know there's more.
There's more.
There's so much more. So while that was a passion that God put in me and a pursuit, and I felt like I have spent my life pursuing that, it's still, I know there's more.
Yes.
But I wanted to see the red letter stuff. I wanted to see blind eyes open. I wanted to see the lives change. I wanted to see people freed from demonic spirits and strongholds in their life. I wanted to see the transformations.
Amen.
And not just churchese.
That's right.
Where we learn a church language and learn how to talk church and walk church, but we're really not experiencing that. Yeah.
Well, the church is making a difference.
Amen.
And when we come back after this break, we're going to talk a little bit more about your personal challenges, physical challenges, but miracles that you've seen in your own life and miracles that you've seen in the church. So when we come back, we'll talk more with Pastor Jim Bolin and his ministry there in West Georgia. So stay with us. After this break, we'll be right back with more of Babbie's House. Welcome back to the show. I'm Babbie Mason, and I've been talking today with Pastor Jim Bolin, who is the founding pastor of Trinity Chapel in West Georgia. And Pastor, you were telling us before we went to the break that it was the desire of your heart to see the works of God that we see in the Bible in operation in your own church. Healing and salvation and deliverance and freedom and people walking in joy and operating in the fruit of the Spirit and the demonstration of the power of God in your own church. And that should be the prayer of every pastor. But you saw something in addition to that. You saw God working in your own life.
Well, you know, when you ask God for something and you're praying for something, you better get ready. Because he answers prayer.
Yes, he does.
Sometimes he doesn't answer the prayer the way you think. You know, my concept was, you know, people coming forward and healing, and I was going to be that vessel that God would do all that through. And there was some of that. But there came a time in my life when I physically had reached a place to where, I mean, I was at the point of probably having to step out of ministry. And because my physical condition had deteriorated so bad, I had developed what is known as ulcerative colitis. And I was very sick, and those that struggle with that disease know what I'm talking about. I went on a journey. This was in the summer of 91. And I went on a journey, just trying to find how to get, I tried all, and I believe in doctors, so I'm not anti-doctor, anti-medicine. I believe in all that. I believe God uses that to heal, but it just wasn't working in my situation. And so I found a doctor who was holistic. He was an MD, he was an internist, and he led me into changing my diet and a lot of things different, and I got some better. In fact, better enough that I was able to come back and resume. I took almost 3 months off, and I was able to step back in to the church. And my church was just loved us through all that. I came back, but within 3 months, I was right back in the same condition. So by the end of that year, I was struggling, and my doctor, my physician said, you know, we're gonna have to do some surgery. We've got to do some cutting out of some things and some restructuring. And I had a friend of mine in the church who had a friend in town. His name was Mahesh Chavid. I think he has a church, I don't know if he still does or not, in the Charlotte area. But Mahesh was an evangelist and traveled at the time. And we went to the Marriott Marquis after the first of the year, 1992.
Downtown Atlanta.
Yeah, downtown Atlanta. And they were doing a big convention there, and Mahesh was there with some other people. At the end of the service, they divided things up into several categories: to be filled with the Spirit, to have, you know, receive a word, and over here was healing. So, you know, I was like a kid in a candy store. I was watching all this, you know, because I was getting to look at all these things happen. So my friend was over there working with Mahesh, And I came over there, and he said, would you like for Mahash to pray for you? Well, you got to understand, I've been prayed for by, I've been greased down by the best. I mean, some names, I start calling names, everybody lay hands on me because I believed in healing.
Yes.
It just wasn't manifested at the time. So I went to, I said, yeah, that's great. And Mahash, I walked up to him, he introduced me as his pastor and said he's sick and told him what I had. And Mahash just looked at me in a very simple, he's an Indian, a very simple, very unassuming person. And he just looked at me and said, oh, Father, this is your child. I ask you to heal him in the name of Jesus. 2 fingers just touched me right there. I mean, he didn't slap me, didn't hit me, didn't jerk me. You know, like sometimes we feel like we got to have all that stuff to happen. Nothing wrong with that, but that just wasn't the way that it was. And then he went, well, I've never had anybody do anything like that. First off, you know, I've been around the block, but I've never seen anybody to do that and then blow on me. But the moment he did, I felt heat at the top of my head. And I could feel it going down my body, Babbie. When it got to my stomach, it was like fire set off inside me. I could feel it. I feel it right now. He's in this room right now.
Amen.
Going down my leg. It went out my feet and bam, I hit the floor. I didn't have a catcher. I believe in the ministry of catching.
Yes.
You know, if you're going to fall out, you need catchers.
Let somebody help
But
you.
I didn't have one. I hit the floor.
But the Holy Spirit caught you.
He did. I went down and laid there for 10 or 15 minutes just crying. I'd never experienced being spiritually inebriated. But I was drunk. I tried to get up on all fours. I was wobbling around, and my friend and his wife got on one side of the other, and they picked me up, and they got me to a seat, and I sat down. I said, let me get my legs under me. Long story short, the night was finished. I got in the car, and my friend he's a big stout guy, and he was on a lot of diets, and he was on an apple diet. Well, if you know anything about ulcerative colitis, you don't eat raw fruit, you don't eat raw vegetables. It's just like knives being stabbed in you. It's very painful. So your diet's very different. And so I ate an apple. Well, I've done a lot of study, and apples, fruit digests in about 15, 20 minutes. No effects. Ate the second apple. We're in Atlanta driving out to Marietta. So I had 2 apples, no pain, no nothing. The next day I get up and I'm like, I feel different. Everything's different about my system.
Praise
Everything's
God.
different. Call my doctor and he says, well, I told him I was healed. And he says, well, that's great, but you're still going to have this surgery. You know, I says, well, do a test.
Before
and so
we
convinced him, he did another test. They did all this, you know, I won't go into the detail of that, but it was tests where they put tubes in you everywhere.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, after it was all done, he comes in, sits down on the side of my bed, looks him in the eye, and he says, I don't know what you've done, but you have the colon of an 18-month-old baby. Go live your life.
What? Hallelujah.
And God healed that. And
Praise
I
you,
eat
Jesus.
anything. I've got like an iron gut.
Yes.
But God did that.
That's
and for me, that was just one of those signs, and I felt like that the Lord was saying to me, you're on the right track. And I have that to tell people because I spent years looking for my healing.
Amen.
Believing for my healing.
Amen. You know, Pastor, we're just about out of time. We got about 45 seconds left in the show. But listen, thank you for coming and instilling us with hope.
Yeah.
Instilling us with the truth.
God's for real, Babbie.
Amen.
He's for real.
He still heals.
He does.
We still have hope.
Don't give up.
He's still working.
Yeah.
He is on your side. He is your friend. He wants your absolute best. You're his favorite, not because of who you are, but because of whose you are. God is on your side. Thank you, Pastor, for being here today.
Thank you. God bless you.
Amen.
Thank you so much.
And thank you, my dear friend, for watching Babbie's House. Will you do me a favor? Log on to Babbie.com and let me know that you have seen today's show and that your heart is filled with encouragement. May the Lord bless you and keep you. That is our prayer. Until the next time we get together, I'm Babbie Mason. This has been Babbie's House, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye for now.